ॐ नमो वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जायमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकरामह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामीनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We are reading from Canto 4, Chapter 25, the characteristics of King Puranjan. So, this is the section where we are seeing Narada Muni approaching Prachina Barhi and giving him a very beautiful allegorical story of King Puranjan. Text 9. Atra te kateshyamim इतिहासं पुरातनं पुरञ्जनस्य चरितं निबोध गदतो mama. Translation.
In this connection, I wish to narrate an old history connected with the character of a king called Puranjana. Please try to hear me with great attention. Purport. The great sage Narada Muni turned toward another topic, the history of King Puranjan. This is nothing but the history of King Prachina Bharishat told in a different way. In other words, this is an allegorical presentation. The word Puranjana means one who enjoys in a body. This is clearly explained in the next few chapters. Because a person entangled in material activities wants to hear stories of material activities, Narada Muni turned to the topics of King Puranjana, who is none other than the king Prachina Bharishat. Narada Muni did not directly deprecate the value of performing sacrifices in which animals are sacrificed. Lord Buddha, however, directly rejected all animal sacrifices. Srila Jayadeva Goswami has stated, Nindasi yagya vidaher ahaha shruti jatam. The word shruti jatam indicates that in the Vedas, animal sacrifice is recommended. But Lord Buddha directly denied Vedic authority in order to stop animal sacrifice. Consequently, Lord Buddha is not accepted by the followers of the Vedas. Because he does not accept the authority of the Vedas, Lord Buddha is depicted as an agnostic or atheistic. The great sage Narada cannot decry the authority of the Vedas, but he wanted to indicate to King Parachin Bharishat that the path of Karma Kanda is very difficult and risky. Foolish persons accept the difficult path of Karma Kanda for the sake of sense enjoyment. And those who are too much attached to sense enjoyment are called Mudas, rascals. It is very difficult for the Muda to understand the ultimate goal of life. In the propagation of Krishna consciousness movement, we actually see that many people are not attracted because they are mudhas, engaged in fruitive activities. It is said, Upadesho hi murkhanam prakopaya na shantaye. If good instructions are given to a foolish rascal, he simply becomes angry and turns against the instructions instead of taking advantage of them. Because Narad Muni knew this very well, he indirectly instructed the king by giving him the history of his entire life. In order to wear a gold or diamond nose pin or earring, one has to pierce the ear or nose. Such pain endured for the sake of sense gratification is endured on the path of karma kanda, the path of fruitive activity. If one wishes to enjoy something in the future, he has to endure trouble in the present. If one wants to become a millionaire in the future and enjoy his riches, he has to work hard at the present moment in order to accumulate money. This is karma kandiya. Those who are too much attached to such path undergo the risk anyway. Narada Muni wanted to show King Prachina Parishad how one undergoes great troubles and miseries in order to engage in fruitive activity. A person who is very much attached to material activity is called Vishayi. A Vishayi is an enjoyer of Vishaya, which means eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Narada Muni is indirectly indicating through the story of King Puranjana that eating, sleeping, mating, and defending are troublesome and risky. The word itihasam, history, and puratanam, old, indicate that although a living entity lives within the material body, the history of the living entity within the material body is very old. In this regard, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur had sung Anadi Karma Phale Padi Bhava Bhavaranava Jale Tari Bare Na Dekhi Upaya. Due to my past fruitive activities, I have fallen into the water of material existence, and I cannot find any way to get out of it. Every living entity is suffering in this material existence from past activities. Therefore, everyone has a very old history. Foolish material scientists have manufactured their own theories of evolution, which are simply concerned with the material body. But actually, this is not the real evolution. The real evolution is the history of the living entity, who is Puranjana, living within the body. Sri Narada Muni will explain this evolutionary theory in a different way for the understanding of sane persons. Hare Krishna.
Now Narada Muni says, Athate kathayishyami. Let me narrate to you Itihasam Puratanam. Itihasam Puratanam, that means a very old history in this connection. Puranjanasya Charitam, it is known as the Charitra of Puranjan, Nibodha Gadato Mamaha. Please hear this with great attention. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada describes that Narada Muni is a great sage, and now he is going to narrate the history of King Puranjan, which is actually the history of everybody. It is not just history of Prachina Barhi. Narada Muni is narrating the history of Puranjan to Prachina Barhi, and Srila Prabhupada is narrating the history of Prachina Barhi to us. But actually, the story of Puranjan is everyone's story. But he is describing this in a different way. So he is basically telling him the story of Puranjan, his own story, Prachina Barhi, but he is describing this in allegorical way. So when Bhagavatam gives allegorical presentation, allegorical matlab pratikatmak, right? It is not the true, it is pratikatmak. So then it will explicitly say it is pratikatmak. Sometimes people have misunderstanding. Oh, spiritual life is all allegorical. Body means these five senses are the five Pandavas, and this and that. And people give some nonsensical idea saying that Bhagavad Gita is just allegorical. No. When Bhagavad Gita is allegorical, they would have said this very clearly that we are telling you an allegorical story, pratikatmak story. So, in the scriptures, there is something, a reality, and to explain reality, certain part is allegorical, right? But not everything in the scriptures is allegorical. That is very important. So, Puranjana, Pura means city, like we have Singapura, Kolhapura, right? So, this is Pura, Kharagpura, right? Pura means city, Jana means one who resides in the city. So Puranjana means one who resides in the city. Now, which city? City of the body, right? Now, Prabhupada says here, many times what happens is people who are interested in the material life, they want to hear material stories, right? What is the proof? Cinema. What is cinema? Cinema is just a storytelling. Cinema is just a storytelling. And people are mad after cinema, right? And now, therefore, Narada Muni, instead of sitting and giving pravachan to Prachina Barhi, that, listen, importance of human form of life, these are the shlokas, this and that. Prachina Barhi, the way he was, he entered the palace. He first showed him, look in the sky, all the animals that you have sacrificed. These are the faulty sacrifices. All these animals you have murdered, not sacrificed. They are waiting for your death. They will pierce your body with the iron horns. But anyway, now I will tell you nice story. Sit here and listen the story. Okay. So this is what is the indirect preaching by Narad Muni. In case of Lord Buddha, the conditions were so severely impacted that he had to directly tell people stop sacrifice. People said, no, we cannot. Vedas. He said, reject Vedas. And because accidentally, out of emergency, Lord Buddha rejected Vedas, followers of Sanatana Dharma do not accept Buddha. Right. He is termed as agnostic or atheistic. Nindasi, Prabhupada quotes Jaydev Goswami here. Nindasi yagya vidher ahaha shruti jatam. Because the Shruti is being rejected. Right. He is termed to be agnostic. So the great sage Narada Muni did not do that. Narada Muni, of course, he wanted to stop the so-called sacrifices of Prachina Barhi, but he took an indirect way and he asked him to listen a beautiful story. Further, Srila Prabhupada explains that the Karma Kanda is always attractive to the people who do not have the higher vision in their life. If one's vision is work hard, party now, that kind of a vision leads to Karma Kanda. And this is a very limited vision. And therefore, the Karma Kandiya philosophy, Prabhupada says that there are many versions of Karma Kanda. Previously, people used to refer to Shastra to become rich and enjoy in the heavenly planets in the next life. Nowadays, people have lost their faith that whether they are body or soul, nobody bothers. Nobody has time. People want to enjoy right away. Right. So now the Karma Kanda has become, Prabhupada says, just to become a millionaire and try to enjoy this life itself. Who knows? Agla janam hai kya nahi? Right. So this attachment to Vishaya. What is Vishaya? Vishaya is Ahara, Nidra, Bhaya, Ityadi. That is the Vishaya. That is called as sense gratification. But this path of this sense gratification is very troublesome and risky. Very troublesome and risky. Right. Recently, I came across a case where the office colleagues and the way office get-togethers happen, this and that, and which was very normal in any offices. But one has to be very careful. What is normal can be objected at any point of time. Okay. So the path of trouble, this path is very troublesome and risky. And therefore, Narada Muni is describing this story. This story is Itihasam Puratanam. Somebody will say it is the allegorical story. But how it is Itihasam Puratanam? Yes, it is allegorical. At the same time, it is Itihasam Puratanam because this is the story of living entity. So, for Prachina Barhi, Narada Muni is telling the story of Puranjan, and Srimad Bhagavatam is telling us the story of Prachina Barhi hearing Puranjan. But ultimately, we have to realize this is our own story, and therefore it is Itihasam Puratanam. Why? Because the history of a living entity in the material world cannot be stressed out. Anadi Bahirmukha, right? For a long time, we are there in this material world. And Prabhupada says, modern science has given this alternative theory of Darwin's evolution. But this is not a Darwin's evolution. It is not that the body is evolving. It is the soul evolving. And therefore, the soul is way far prachin than what the typical understanding is like 10,000 years and 40,000 years of Stone Age and this and that. Text 10. Asit Puranjano nama Raja Rajan Bruhatshruvah tasya avidnyatam tasya avidnyata nama asit Sakha vidnyata cheshtitah. Translation.
Translation. My dear king, once in the past lived a king named Puranjana who was celebrated for his great activities. He had a friend named Avijñata, the unknown one. No one could understand the activities of Avijñata. Purport. Every living entity is Purajana. The word Puram means within this body, within this form, and Jnana means living entity. Thus, everyone is Purajana. Every living entity is supposed to be the king of his body because the living entity is given full freedom to use his body as he likes. He usually engages his body for his sense gratification because one who is in the bodily conception of life feels that the ultimate goal of life is to serve the senses. This is the process of karma kanda. One who has no inner knowledge, who does not know that he is actually the spirit soul living within the body, who is simply enamored by the dictation of the senses, is called materialist. A materialistic person interested in sense gratification can be called a Puranyan. Because such a materialistic person utilizes his senses according to his whims, he may also be called a king. An irresponsible king takes the royal position to be his personal property and misuses his treasury for sense gratification. The word Braha Sarvaha is also significant. The word Sarvaha means fame. The living entity is famous from ancient times. For as stated in Bhagavad Gita 2.20, Na Jayate Mriyate Va. The living entity is never born and never dies. Because he is eternal, his activities are eternal, although they are performed in different types of bodies. Na hanyate hanayamane sharire. He does not die even after the annihilation of the body. Thus, the living entity transmigrates from one body to another and performs various activities. In each body, the living entity performs so many acts. Sometimes he becomes a great hero, just like Hiranyakashipu and Kamsa, or in the modern age, Napoleon or Hitler. The activities of such men are certainly very great, but as soon as their bodies are finished, everything else is finished. Then they remain in name only. Therefore, a living entity may be called Braha Sarvaha. He may have a great reputation for various types of activities. Nonetheless, he has a friend whom he does not know. Materialistic persons do not understand that God is present as a super soul who is situated within the heart of every living entity. Although the Paramatma sits beside the Jivatma as a friend, the Jivatma or living entity does not know it. Consequently, he is described as Avinyanta Sakha, meaning one who has an unknown friend. The word Avinyanata Chestitaha is also significant because a living entity works hard under the direction of the Paramatma and is carried away by the laws of nature. Nonetheless, he thinks himself independent of God and independent of the stringent laws of material nature. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita, Achedyo Yama Dahayoyam Kledyo Shosham Evam Cha Nitya Sarvagataha Sthananur Achaloyam Sanatanaha. This individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble and can be neither buried nor dried. He is everlasting, all-pervading, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. The living entity is Sanatana, eternal, because he cannot be killed by any weapon, burnt into ashes by fire, soaked or moistened by water, nor dried up by air. He is considered to be immune to material reactions. Although he is changing bodies, he is not affected by the material conditions. He is placed under the material conditions and he acts according to the directions of his friend, the super soul. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 15.15, Sarvasya Chaham Hriday Sanivishto Mataha Smritir Jnanam Apahonam Cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Thus, the Lord as Paramatma is situated in everyone's heart, and he gives directions to the living entity to act in whatever way the living entity desires. In this life and in his previous lives, the living entity does not know that the Lord is giving him a chance to fulfill all kinds of desires. No one can fulfill any desire without the sanction of the Lord. All the facilities given by the Lord are unknown to the conditional soul. Hare Krishna.
So now, Asit Puranjano Nama, name of this king. I'm telling you a very old story, Itihasam Puratanam. Asit Puranjano Nama. There was this king named Puranjan. Raja Rajan Bruhachrava. O king, Raja. So Narad Muni is actually giving a hint. This is your story. Raja, my dear Prachinavarhi. Rajan Bruhachrava. Tasya Avidnyatanam Sakha Asit. He had a friend whose name is Avidnyata. And nobody could understand Avidnyata Cheshtitaha. Nobody could understand the activities of Avidnyata. Right? What a wonderful beginning of the story. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that every living entity is Puranjan. Right? This is our own story, and he is also Raja. Every living entity is Raja because he is whimsically using the senses whatever he wants to do. Just like sometimes the king may, whimsically use the royal treasury because there is nobody to ask him. Therefore, he is also, the Puranjan is also called as Raja. Simply engaged in under the dictation of the senses along with his whim, and therefore he is also Bruhacharava. Why? Because living entity is very famous. He has very famous for, just remember the, sometimes, okay, let's go somewhere. Sometimes, some actor is very famous, array, he has done this role here, he has done this role here, he has done this role here, correct? Say, you can take Ranveer Singh, he had become Durandar, he had become Peshwa Bajirao, he had become this, he had become that, seven, and he's very famous, and he had become some dacoit also, some khilji also. Sometimes he had done some stupid activities also. So, so similarly, we may not know our own past and our own past times, but on the universal level, when the demigods are watching, or just Yamaraj ji and others they are watching, they know, अरे ये तो अपना ही बंदा है, ये पहले लाइफ में कॉकरोच था, उससे पहले लाइफ में लायन था, उससे पहले लाइफ में उधर मंदार पर्वत पे, maybe he was a crane on that this thing. So living entity has performed so many activities that he is also very famous. Right. It is little sarcastically being spoken here, but he is also Brihat Sharava. And for the Lord, just like for the mother, any activity of a little child is a pastime. So Lord treats everything as a pastime of his own dear child. But those who are managing under the Lord, it's like the elder sister, elder brother who is taking care of the little one, and the mother is always happy with the little one, and the elder brother has to, or elder sister has to just, make sure that the entire house is in order, which is in mess by this little one. So similarly, Lord treats living entities this thing as okay, चल रहा है, बच्चा खेल रहा है करके garden में. But the living entity is also Bruhacharava. He has become very famous. मराठीमध्ये म्हणतो एवढे गुण उधळलेत त्यांनी. It has become very famous everywhere. But he has one very secret friend. And the name of the friend is Avidnyata Sakha. Avidnyata means not very easily to be known. Sakha means friend. And this Avidnyata Sakha is also assisting the living entity with Avidnyata Cheshtitaha. That all the endeavors a living entity takes on, this Paramatma ensures the facilities are created through the laws of material nature. Upadrashta Anumanta cha Bharta Bhokta Maheshwara. This Avidnyata Sakha is taking care of Puranjan. So Puranjan is the individual soul, unbreakable, insoluble. He is everlasting, unchangeable. And he is Sanatanam. Prabhupada quotes Bhagavad Gita there. He cannot be killed by weapon. And such a personality is actually immune to material reactions, but because he's constantly changing the bodies and being affected by the material conditions, although he is internally immune. Right? He's bewildered. He's thinking that he is affected by so many things, but he's actually immune. And this Avidnyata Sakha, where he stays, Sarvasya Chaham Hridi Sannivishto. The Lord is residing as Paramatma in everybody's heart and giving these instructions to living entity. So Prabhupada says, in this life or in the previous life, the living entity does not know that he is getting chance after chance by the mercy of this Avidnyata Sakha, who is situated right in the heart of, next to the living entity, inside the heart, Hridhi Sannivishtaha. So, yeah, we have 5 minutes. Text 11. Sonveshamana Sharanam Babrama Prithivim Prabhu Nanurupam Yada Vindat Abhutsa Vimanaiva. Translation.
King Puranjana began to search for a suitable place to live, and thus he traveled all over the world. Even after a great deal of traveling, he could not find a place just to his liking. Finally, he became morose and disappointed. Purport: the travelings of Puranjana are similar to the travelings of the modern hippies. Generally, hippies are sons of great fathers and great families. It is not that they are always poor, but some way or another, they abandon the shelter of their rich fathers and travel all over the world. As stated in this verse, the living entity wants to become a Prabhu or master. The word Prabhu means master, but actually the living entity is not a master. He is the eternal servant of God. When the living entity abandons the shelter of God, Krishna, and tries to become a Prabhu independently, he travels all over the creation. There are 84 lakh species of the life and millions and trillions of planets within the creation. The living entity wanders throughout these various types of bodies and throughout different planets, and thus he is like King Puranjana, who traveled all over the world looking for a suitable place to live. Sri Narottam Das Thakur has sung Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, Kevala Vishayar Bhanda. The path of Karma Kanda, fruitive activities, and the path of Jnana Kanda, speculation, are just like strong pots of poison. Amruta Baliya Yeba Khaya Nana Yoni Sada Phire. A person who mistakes this poison to be nectar and drinks it travels in different species of life. Kadarya Bhakshana Kare. And according to his body, he eats all types of abominable things. For instance, when the living entity is in the body of a hog, he eats stool. When the living entity is in the body of a crow, he eats all kinds of refuse, even pus and mucus, and enjoys it. Thus, Narottam Das Thakur points out that the living entity travels in different types of bodies and eats all kinds of abominable things. When he does not become ultimately happy, he becomes morose or takes to the ways of hippies.
Yeah, so we will read in two sections. So now here, Sonveshamanaha Sharanam. Now this King Puranjan began to search for suitable place to live and thus traveled all over the world. And for the want of a suitable place, finally he became very morose and disappointed. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that the travel of the Puranjan is similar to travel of the modern day hippies. One is simply looking for, Prabhupada says hippies are not somebody, the hippie culture. What was the hippie culture? Hippie culture was, we have to see when the hippie culture happened. So there was a great World War II around 1940s. So 1940s generation suffered in a big way. So they worked extremely hard so that, yeah, so that's why we unmute everybody in the beginning. Okay. So this generation suffered so hard that they decided that let us work very hard and just like normally parents will think, let my child not suffer the way we have suffered. So 1940s generation worked extremely hard. And when their sons and daughters in 1960s, they got a lot of abundance without any endeavor and without any the struggle for the material existence. And that led to their search for the meaning in life, and they wanted to find a meaning in life typically with the ahar nidra bhaya ityadi, and they just started wandering. So Prabhupada said it is not that they are some the wretched people. Many times they are the sons of great father and great families, but they wander, abandon their rich father, and simply wander. Here, living entity is also called as Prabhu because he wants to become Prabhu. Krishna Bhuliya Jiv, he wants to forget the living entity. Bhogavancha Kare wants to become a Prabhu, and then he is trapped by Maya, and thus, being trapped by Maya, what happens is that he begins to rotate in the cycle of samsara vartmashu. Srila Prabhupada quotes Narottam Das Thakur, Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, Keval Vishera Bhanda, Amrita Baliya Yai Khaya, Nana Yoni Sada Fere. So what happens is that one may think it is Amrit, and one will do tapasya, one will go to heavenly planet, like we will see in the 10th canto, Maharaj Nirga. He performed so much of karma kand, and one slight mistake, he became lizard in the well. So Nana Yoni Fire, kardaya bhakshan kare. And and he will be eating all kind of abominable substances when he goes to different species of the life. Prabhupada gives 3 examples. Becomes a hog, eats stool. Becomes a crow, will eat all pus, blood, mucus, all the nasty substances. Is the same living entity who is as divine as any other human being, but because he's got caught up in karma kanda, jnana kanda, he is nana unifere brahmanda brahmite. So we will conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai,
Jai.
Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Thank you,
Jai.
Prabhupada. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Prabhuji.
everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhupada.
Thank you.